One of the Colts' supposed potential stars is going to miss the next month. What's next in Josh Downs' absence? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hello, everyone. I am Zach Hicks, your favorite film nerd over at horseshoehuddle.com, and I'm joined as always, by our boots on the ground, our beat reporter there for horseshoehuddle.com as well, Jake Arthur. He's here bringing you the inside scoop when it comes to training camp. And look, if you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get that inside scoop, follow the link in our show notes. But Jake is here to recap day 9 of training camp. And really, there's only one thing that happened in this training camp practice that is super noteworthy, but we're still going to go offense and defense and give you that Anthony Richardson update as well. But before we get into the big noteworthy note there with that happened in practice, we do have a couple of updates on other injuries before we get to the big one here. Defensive end Tyquan Lewis and wide receiver Ashton Doolin both missed practice today. Wesley French was also not at practice after suffering an injury the other day. Will Mallory, the tight end that we all had high hopes for, missed again with a hamstring injury. That's his 5th straight practice out. Linebacker Jalen Carlisle is also out for the 5th straight day. And then Jake's boy, Liam Anderson, and Kendall Brooks as well were also out for their 3rd straight days. Defensive tackle Raekwon Davis, still on that active non-football illness with high blood pressure. He's been out for all of training camp at this point. And then, Dio Dangbo returned. Hey, Dio Dangbo returned. There we go. You know what? All is forgiven now for football gods. No injuries anymore. Dio Dangbo's back. That's all we could ask for today, right, Jake?
That's right. Until Dio Dangbo has come true. So there you go, Kenan. That was a positive spin at the beginning of the day, is seeing like, oh shoot, he's out there. Oh, what, are we already getting the noise? Expect that today.
As you say, oh shoot, he's out there. The rooster had to make his presence known for you, Jake. So
yes,
oh shoot, he's out there.
Expect a lot of that today. He only recently started shutting up like a couple minutes ago. So Dio Dangbo was back. That's great, because I've been saying, hey, he's probably your other starting defensive end in Samson Ebukham's absence. So he was back out there, got some occasional work with the ones. So that's, to be expected. But Jannard Avery left early. He had kind of a wrap around his left thigh, upper leg area. So we'll see how long that costs him. But obviously the big one is Josh Downs. Just a really unfortunate thing all around. It was a session of 7-on-7s, which the Colts had pads on today, but they're not doing live tackling, and 7-on-7s is minimal contact at most, right? And so Richardson hits Downs on just a little short out route along the left side, and Nick Cross drags him down, and lo and behold, Downs has to be really all but carried off the field. The thing where you got your arms around 2 guys on either side and you can't put any weight on the ankle.
Right.
He got carried back to the tent, and then Richardson and Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman kind of followed behind and to go check on their guy. Luckily, shortly after practice, Jeremy Fowler came out and said that it's just a high ankle sprain, which that's great that it's not like a fractured ankle. It's going to keep him out all year or anything. But he should be out a minimum of a month, it sounds like. When it comes to a high ankle sprain, that is something, however, that lingers. That's something that in some instances, I don't have inside knowledge to Downs specific issue, like it just happened. But in some instances that requires surgery, and in others you have to leave it be and just let it heal on its own with rest for weeks and weeks. So we'll see how it goes. But if the Colts are lucky, he'll be back within, the first couple weeks of the regular season. But it now kind of creates a void and a question of what do the Colts do at slot receiver? Because Downs was a guy who we've kind of been discussing as, could he lead the Colts in receptions? His connection with Anthony Richardson has been red hot. if you're looking at an offensive MVP of training camp, I think Josh Downs is it. I mean, he's on the very short list by any means that you look at it. So Downs has had a great camp, and now it's come to an end.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the repercussion of this injury, what it means for the offense, what it means going forward, and also other things regarding this injury. But I did want to kind of pick your brain because you have been to training camp for years. You've talked with players for years. You have seen what happens in practices for a long time. Jake, you've been doing this for a while. And, a lot of the response from people on social media, a lot of fan response has been about like negative responses to Nick Cross. And I'm not someone who's experienced in this as much. Like I have been to a couple training camp practices. I've talked to a couple players at these pressers and stuff. So I'm not really the person to get upset about this stuff because I just don't know the circumstance. But from your experience, you've been to practice for years. You've seen how 7-on-7s go. Was there something about the hit that shouldn't have happened in your opinion, or what? Like, did it seem like something that like a fan should be upset about when it comes to like this hit happening and this ultimate thing, like regardless of the result, just the fact that this hit even happened in practice?
I mean, it's not egregious because you do see inadvertent contact and stuff a lot. Even in 7-on-7s, guys like get too close and they collide, or just again inadvertent contact. But this was unnecessary. Again, in 7-on-7s, it's a passing thing, and like you maybe wrap some guy up is like the most physical thing that happens in 7-on-7s. Like a guy, catches the ball and runs into your area and you just hug him up. Basically, this was Downs catching a short ball and Cross dragging him down. If he didn't get hurt, it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But Shane Steichen ripped into him right after it happened, right there as the play. And I mean, you see that from Shane sometimes with guys, but Shane is always very protective of his players and stuff to the media. And he didn't say Nick Cross by name or anything, but it was asked, from your vantage point, what happened there. And he was like, we got to be smart. We cannot go to the ground, point blank period. And so he was against the play. Probably the most disappointing part of it is Cross did not take any accountability whatsoever when we talked to him afterward. I will say I don't think he's super comfortable talking to media, so I will acknowledge part of that. He's not very open and like chatty with us, but he was asked like 2 or 3 times, to defend it or explain it or anyway, and he basically was just like, we're out here playing football. I'm just, I just made a play, and it's like, yeah, man, but it's 7-on-7. This wasn't 11-on-11s, and you guys aren't even tackling in 11-on-11s either right now. So it did not look great. He did not do anything to improve the situation afterward, and I think that's part of the outcry. If you guys haven't seen it, you can see it for yourself. I posted the video of Cross's media availability to the Locked On Colts YouTube. So I'm overblowing it. I don't think so. I think I'm saying the exact same thing and have the exact reaction of a lot of people, especially like you mentioned. I see the context of all this and the gray areas throughout camp, and an occasional tackle or something like that in camp is not the end of the world by any means, but this situation was not necessary. Now, I don't think it was malicious. I don't think he was trying to be violent. Obviously, it was just a boneheaded thing to do.
Right. And look, at the end of the day, football is an emotional sport. Like, even if you're in practice, if a guy beats you, especially when you're in a camp battle like he is, where you're trying to win that starting spot, you're going to go all out and try to make a play. And I'm not even criticizing his response to anything, or like, I didn't want to get on here and yell about Nick Cross with this because, again, football things happen, but it is just a very unfortunate thing. And to have Shane Steichen say afterwards, like, we can't have that happen. And then again, like you said, Cross, not the most media guy just because he doesn't do this very often, and have the response that happened. It feels like a very unfortunate situation. So I'm not trying to tell you guys how to react to what happened or anything like that. I just wanted to let you guys have Jake's perspective on it because he's been there, done that for years. And that's what Jake had to say about it. Because I personally I'm not at practice every single day and stuff like that. That's why we have Jake here, to make sure that you guys know from his point of view there. But yeah, it's an unfortunate thing that happened with Cross and Downs today. Downs will play this year. Most likely, I guess you can never fully say with Colts players, but Josh Downs will be out there this year. He'll probably be hampered a little bit by it, but there is some positive spin to it. The positive spin kind of being Anthony Gould gets some starter reps in the offseason. So in our next segment, guys, we're going to dive into what this means for the offense, what this means for Anthony Gould, and what the offense can look like with Gould taking down spot in the starting lineup for all of training camp and maybe a little bit into the regular season. But first, guys, look, sports are winding down. It's kind of that dead season for sports, but Major League Baseball is going strong right now. And look, you guys probably like better teams than what I like. I am a Washington Nationals fan. It's awful for me. I know some of you guys are Chicago White Sox fans. It's even worse for you guys. But if you're someone out there who enjoys watching baseball because you like a good team, well, Gametime is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to that first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You get last-minute deals, which can save you up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and anything near you. You get flash deals. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event, and you get the Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, which is really clutch for all of you out there who have kids and are trying to drag those little demons out to the ballpark. You know how life happens, and sometimes you got to cancel. You got that ticket coverage. It's perfect for you. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And Locked On Colts Everydayers, thank you for making Locked On Colts your first listen today and every day for your second listen. Enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insight into the best fantasy draft strategy so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Locked On Colts Everydayers, we're back talking offense, how the offense did. We're going to lump Anthony Richardson into this as well, but I think the first thing we really got to start off with when it comes to not only this practice, but just going forward with the Josh Downs injury is what this means for Anthony Gould in the starting offense. Now, luckily, in my opinion, and Jake, you can weigh in on this as well because you've seen every day of training camp, but in my opinion, Gould is such a better depth player than they've had at the position in a long time at wide receiver for the Colts, to where the drop off from Downs to Gould isn't as massive as it would have been in years past. Like even last year when they had a veteran player in Isaiah McKenzie, I feel more confident in Anthony Gould. And I know he's a rookie, but like, I just feel more confident in his profile, his speed, his athleticism, what he's done in camp. I mean, everything you've been saying about him has been a great camp. So am I wrong to have some kind of optimism and kind of some excitement in Anthony Gould getting some run with the first team?
No, I'm kind of drinking the Kool-Aid as well. And obviously a spotlight is going to be shined on him because Gould is the most direct replacement and the guy who benefits the most directly from Downs being out. I mean, he was the first guy that went in at slot receiver today after Downs went out. But I've already been talking about him, and I'm not the only one. And today we asked pretty much everyone we talked to, Joe Flacco, Shane Steichen. I asked Ed Dodds. I spoke to Brian Bratton, who is the offensive quality control coach, but he specializes in receivers. And everybody had really good things to say about Gould. And that's not uncommon. But when it comes to rookies and everything, you hear a lot of yeah buts. Like, he's fast, but he's just got to be consistent. He's fast, but he's got some catching up to do. There were no yeah buts. They were like, this guy is fast. His speed's different. It's not just like track speed. Like, his play speed is really good. And that, we're seeing that on the field as well. Like, the guy does something positive every day. Like during one-on-ones today, he was routinely cooking the defender and getting open and getting hit on the sideline with the ball. Like he was doing his job. I mean, I've talked about Joe Flacco having a good connection with him. That's a guy who's been in the league for a million years. He doesn't have to glom on with a rookie, but that is who he is feeling most comfortable with is this rookie receiver who's stretching the field and getting open and everything. And Flacco said he's been drawn to watching Gould even when they're not on the field together. Like when Gould's getting second team or first team reps and Flacco's watching, like he's still looking at what Gould is doing. So really positive returns from this guy. And also with Downs going out, it also pretty much seals him into the return jobs as well. So big beneficiary from this. Now, I do think it's going to be kind of a team effort to replace Downs. I don't think it's just going to be a 1-for-1 replacement. But I think the person who benefits the most and will see the biggest uptick in action will be Gould.
Yeah. And again, this doesn't mean like even when Downs comes back, Gould is the starter or anything like that. Like he would have to be putting up like prime Antonio Brown numbers in Downs' absence to take over that spot. But I do think it's a different dynamic that you're getting from the spot. With Downs, you're getting, and I'm not comparing him exactly to these players, but like the Cole Beasleys, like the Wes Welker, like slot guys, Julian Edelman type slot guys who are quick winners underneath, create after the catch, do some things with it. I think with Gould, you're getting more of like what Kez Watkins gave the Eagles in 2021, a slot guy who can push outside a little bit and win vertically down the field and create a little bit with the ball in his hands. Like you've seen that ability in college with him, and so far in camp, we've seen that. So I think it brings a different dynamic to the position, but I do think Gould is one of the better separators on this team, just in terms of, again, the speed and the quickness. And if you want anyone to replace that Downs role, you want one of your best separators. So you're going to look at guys like Gould, or maybe a guy like Kylan Granson, or maybe an AD Mitchell at times, because he is that fluid off the line. Like he probably has to improve his urgency a little bit off the line, but overall, I think he could be a decent fit there too. But I think they can get creative with it. There's going to be some ways that this can work, but hopefully it's not too long in the regular season that we have to really talk about this. But getting more reps for a young player with the starters and more experience with Anthony Richardson certainly isn't a bad thing. So if you want to spin this in any way possible in a positive light, it's the fact that, hey, they're getting a young, fun rookie, more time with the starters, and Downs is not out for the whole year as of right now. That's the best I can do with this situation here. Before we get out of the offensive segment, though, Jake, we do have to talk about Anthony Richardson. Obviously, this is the Anthony Richardson podcast at this point. Looks like he had a pretty decent day completing the ball. They hit a couple of deep balls and stuff, one to Michael Pittman Jr. as well. I know it was kind of a sloppy day with the weather out there, but overall, how'd the offense look and how did Anthony Richardson look?
Yeah, not terrible. Not Anthony's worst day. He was 10 of 16, which is 62.5% completions. Obviously, we have to take training camp completion percentages with a huge grain of salt, but I am starting to settle into the fact that, like, I do think he'll be around a 60% completion guy when the regular season comes around. It could be anywhere from 60 to 65. I don't know, but like, if you think about it, Andrew Luck wasn't always like a high completion guy either. So like, if you're getting big plays out of it, doesn't really matter. But so today, short stuff was pretty crisp. Intermediate, the timing wasn't great. He was kind of late on some of his throws. The deep ball, I don't know if he's trying out something with the deep ball or not. We're used to him kind of seeing him throw it on a rope where like it's there when it needs to be immediately. He's kind of hanging him up a little bit right now. And I don't think it's a matter of arm strength, because like it looks like it used to before he got hurt. So I don't think that's like, it's not related to the shoulder, I don't think. But he may be working on touch and putting a little too much touch on the deep ball. That allowed, like Juju Brents, for example, today, he had a couple pass breakups because of that. But he seemed to correct it by the end of the practice, because like I mentioned, he had that Michael Pittman Jr. one, hit him for 35-ish yards down the left side. And then just like a play or two later, had Drew Ogletree pretty wide open for an easy touchdown, but Ogletree just didn't really carry that momentum through his route and just wound up not quite being right there. But to me, that wasn't a bad throw. It looked like Anthony took credit for a poor throw, but it looked to all of us like Ogletree just didn't finish with his momentum. But he corrected it by the end of practice. That's pretty common for him. Like, he's not a guy that makes a lot of the same mistakes over and over. And if you see something's not working, you usually see it improve by the end of practice. So not his best day, but definitely not his worst either. With him, I just like to see things get corrected when it's like visibly not going well. And he seemed to do that.
Yeah, the big thing I'll say real quick when it comes to completion percentage, whether it's practice or even in the games, is all completion percentages are not created equal. It depends on how you're missing and where you're missing. If you have an average depth of target of 11 yards down the field and you're a 60% passer, well, yeah, you're throwing the ball more down the field. If you're forcing the issue and pushing it vertical, you're not going to be a 70% passer. But also, if your short passes are, if you're completing your under 10-yard passes at like an 80% clip, like your completion is going to look great, but like if that's all you're throwing, that's going to impact it. So it really depends on where you're targeting the ball and where you're missing. It's one thing to miss high or low to the outside the numbers. And it's another thing to miss high over the middle because you're going to get someone killed and you're going to throw more picks that way. So it really depends on how the misses are happening, where they're coming, and ultimately what your offense is asking you to do. So whether his completion percentage this year is 55%, 60, 65%, it really matters where that is in the context of the offense, which we're going to learn about obviously in these next couple of weeks and then into the regular season as well. But don't worry, guys, before we get out of here today, we do have to talk a little bit about defense. And Juju Brents looks like he had a pretty good day. So buckle in, guys. We got some defense to talk about, and then we'll get out of here for the day. But first, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board either. They help you hire professionals who you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to that perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're looking on LinkedIn, if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats nowadays, and they don't really have the time to actually go through the entire hiring process. So LinkedIn is making it easier for you. They even just launched a new feature that helps you write job descriptions. It's one reason that 2.5 million small businesses trust LinkedIn for their hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Alrighty, Locked On Colts everydayers. While I work through several different accents, I was putting on words there in that last read there. We're going to kick it over to Jake to talk defense. I saw some positive things about Juju Brents, which is great, Jake, because we don't get many positive things from the cornerback room this offseason. So what can you tell me about Juju Brents and his pretty solid day today?
Yeah, I'm out here playing defense right now. There's like a crazy amount of flies. I can't imagine it has anything to do with the rooster by any means. But no, Juju, I decided I'm going to have a positive spin to this because so early in the day, it was super wet out here. Like it was misty. Like we were literally just like sitting in a cloud essentially. So it was real wet. Like guys weren't holding on to the ball or anything. But early in practice, Juju had a couple of pass breakups that he should have pulled down. And maybe he would have in a non-wet environment. But you know what? Pass breakups count on a game. That's still a loss of downs. And I think I'm being so nice because, the football dads in the crowd are like, come on, Juju, catch the ball. You got guys who can't be coaching and yelling at their kids at the moment. So they have to yell at the grown men in front of them on the field. So, yeah, I'll stick up for Juju on that. That would have been a loss of downs. He would have ended the drive today. So, and we really haven't heard much about the starting corners, which is good and bad. Like some of them get cooked on occasion, but I mean, Juju, I think has had a decent camp. I don't feel like he's on the receiving end of the business very often.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned the football dads out there because look, they're gonna yell about, hey, finish the rep, finish the play. Look, if you can get one hand on it, you got to make the catch. But look, there's a reason why he's playing DB. Remember, that's another
right.
Football thing right there.
There's
a reason why he's playing DB. But no, all I care about with young players at this point is just be in position. Be in position to make those plays, and eventually those plays will happen. One of the players I grew up just being a huge fan of was Carlos Rogers with Washington, and it seemed like he dropped an interception every 5 minutes with Washington. Then he goes to the 49ers and has an all-pro season hauling in like 8 interceptions. Like eventually the picks are going to come as long as they're hitting your hands. Like you can only drop so many. So the fact that Juju was just in that position to make those plays, I'm fine with that. I will take that at this point in training camp here. Another thing we need to talk about today, and we talk about this obviously every day when it comes to the defense, but Obviously, Samson Ebukam is out for the year. They have another couple guys who have been danged up all year too, like Taekwon Lewis just missed the practice. Dio Dangbo is finally getting back to practice. What did the rotation look like there, though? I know Taekwon was out today, but they had Dio and they had Laiatu Latu out there today, right?
Yeah, we're just like never going to know what the defensive end rotation would have been. Obviously, we won't because Ebukam's out. But Dio Dangbo comes back today, and then Taekwon Lewis sits out his first day. But really, the only constant in this has been Kwity Paye and Laiatu Latu. Latu, of course, he keeps getting into the backfield. He's explosive off the edge. He had a pressure today that got Quentin Nelson to kind of dap him up after the play. I don't know exactly what it was. It's probably something we couldn't really see, but Quentin really liked what he saw from Latu on that play, even being on the opposite side of him. But I think the first team reps are really starting to skew towards Latu a bit. Now, part of that may be just getting a young guy who's now going to have to play a lot up to speed, or it could be the fact that they're trying to find out who's the best combo, because they don't have to make it Kwity and Taekwon or Kwity and Dio. Like, Latu is obviously the future, probably at some point this season. If you can get him ready now, then shoot, the future's now, and Taekwon and Dio can retreat back to their rotational roles.
Right.
I don't see what would be the huge problem with that. But the Latu definitely seems to be getting more and more first team reps now, regardless of whether it's passing down or early down. But they're getting the guy ready, and I mean, he keeps responding. He hasn't had like any huge days like he did last week yet, or like since then. But I mean, I still notice positive things from him each practice.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about him too, is because I know he's the shiny new toy, so it's always fun to watch and get excited about that. And I don't want to get caught up in the hyperbole with it, but in your mind, has he been the biggest winner of this Colts camp so far? Just in terms of, like, we're not even talking with injuries around him, because that's honestly the most part how you become a winner of training camp is everyone else getting hurt around you and you getting a bigger role because of it. But just from his play and just from how ready he looks and like the troubles he's given, like a Bernhardt Ryman type player who's a good offensive tackle in this league, would you say Laiatu Latu's kind of been the big winner of Colts camp, and like your expectations are maybe even higher for him going into this next season?
I think you could say that because, at the night he was drafted, I think we both tried to temper expectations and say that, like, he was a decent run defender in college and everything, but like maybe he only gets a designated pass rusher role, at least early in his career. I just said it like a minute ago. Like, if he's showing out, you keep giving him more and more reps. Why don't you just start him right off the bat? So I think he's taken advantage of every opportunity given. Again, the best ability is availability, and some of his peers and the guys he's competing with aren't staying in the lineup. Now, I don't know what it is with Lewis. It could even be like a veteran rest day. Like, the guy has earned it. If anyone on the team has earned it, he's one of them. But no, I mean, he's taken advantage of every opportunity. You look at a short list of big winners from camp who have like taken advantage of things. You look at him and maybe like Julian Blackmon. But he's certainly on the short list, if not number one on that list.
Yeah, like we have to temper expectations because he's a rookie, but he's also a 24-year-old rookie. Like, he's an experienced rookie.
He's ready-made. Like, this isn't hyperbole. Like, I've talked to non-Colts people, like national people, NFL people, like people on all sides of the coin, and his readiness and like pass rush prowess legitimately is up there with those guys who were just incredibly productive right off the bat, like Bosa, TJ Watt, those guys. Like, Colts fans, you finally got one. Like, he's not just like a quality young pass rusher that you're going to have to work on for a couple years. Like, you might finally have one of those dominant edge rushers that like you can only get by drafting high in the draft.
Yes, I am. Like, I don't want to get too excited because I've been hurt in the past, guys. Right. I have been hurt. And this really good players, this potentially really good play, like this one feels different. Maybe that's the optimism in me. Maybe I'm just too optimistic at my core, but like it feels a little different this time, especially as a pass rusher. As a pass rusher, we have not seen a player this developed since old man Justin Houston walked in the door a couple years ago, and he didn't have the juice that young Justin Houston obviously had. If we're going with the juice and with the development, I mean, it might be the Frenier Mathises that we're talking about in terms of what last time we've seen something like this in Indy. So hopefully he can live up to that. I'm not trying to put those expectations on him from day one, but it'd be nice if he hit them. It'd be nice if he hit them and came out the gates just firing, But Laiatu Latu, man, I think he's the player I'm the most excited to see, not only this preseason, but this regular season, because if he can be that Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, even as they're like their rookie levels, like if he can hit where they were as rookies, this Colts defense could be better than what we're talking. And maybe that's still like an average defense, but like, I'll take an average defense, guys. I will 100% take an average defense this year with him leading the way as their pass rusher.
Yeah, that's without question. Obviously, the depth takes a hit without Ebukam, but I mean, if you've got this young guy still he's got young, fresh legs, a ton of juice and everything. He had a couple years without football. Like in football terms, he's still young. He should have the endurance to play long snaps. Like if you have to play Latu more and you don't get the Ebukam snaps, like that stinks. But you get a guy who is a hell of a pass rusher, as far as we know. I mean, he has to play in the NFL first, but I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt so far. He's done everything right that he can to this point. But I mean, it's not going to be the end of the world. And if you're going to have a secondary where you don't know what's going on back there, it really helps to have a good pass rush.
Yeah, for sure. We're too hurt in our past, Jake, to go too excited and like scream that this is the next superstar, but this is as close as we get to that. So I'm excited for him. I'm pumped for him, and I really am excited to see him this Sunday in the Colts' first preseason game. We'll obviously have more talking about that preseason game later this week, but I do want to thank you guys for making us Locked On Colts your first listen today and every day. Now go make your second listen the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get that daily insight into the best fantasy draft strategy so you can win your league this season. You can find the link to Locked On Fantasy Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And speaking of the show notes, you can also become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get that inside scoop if you follow that link in the show notes. And if you guys don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on social medias. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube where we list your podcasts. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.